Hi, folks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me. My name is Ankita. I am the co founder and CEO of Acto.io. It's an open source API security platform. You can actually find Acto on GitHub. Go to GitHub, type github.com/Acto API security/Acto. And there we are. You can download Acto and start using. You don't have to pay for it. It's completely open source. Today, I'm going to be taking next 25 minutes to explain to you three topics. First, why does API security matter? And I'm going to discuss a few case studies of past API data breaches. Second, how Acto solves for API security. And we'll go into deep dive of Acto demo and how Acto is solving for all of the use cases in API security. And the third one, which is, what's coming next for our API security roadmap. Let's talk about our first topic. Why does API security matter? And I'll give a brief of some of the very recent data breaches. One of them was of Facebook. It happened in April 2021. About 500 million users' data, including names, phone numbers, email addresses, got leaked because of an API vulnerability. The very recent one was of Optus. It's an Australian fintech company, and it happened in 2022. In Optus's case, there was an API, which was an internal API but was exposed to public. The API endpoint didn't have any authentication or authorization mechanism, which means anyone could have requested the endpoint without any ID or token. And that's exactly what happened, and they had a massive data breach last year. Now, let me talk about some of the API security problems that we have faced, in our experience in our last 1.5 years of building Acto. Some of these problems are one, as an AppSec engineer, I don't know my API attack surface. What is my API attack surface? Second, when did a developer deploy new API? I do not know, and I want to know about it. Third, when did a developer change an API? When was a new parameter added to an API? Fourth, what is the sensitive data exposure through my APIs? Fifth, how do I test for all OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities pre-production? Sixth, how do I automate business logic testing for my APIs? These are some of the API security problems that we are going to look at how Acto is solving and has a roadmap to solve in future. All right, let's discuss how Acto solves for API security. And for the next few minutes, I will discuss Acto's 4 use cases for the open source version. The first use case is API discovery. The second use case is sensitive data exposure. Third, adding custom YAML test for API security testing. Fourth, automated API testing. Now, in the next few minutes, we'll be going into the demo of Acto on all of these 4 use cases. All right, let's go to Acto's first use case, API discovery in 5 minutes. Now, I'm going to show you this demo where we are going to connect with Burp Suite, download Acto's Burp Suite extension, and see how API inventory populates once we get all the traffic in Burp. You can see over here, I'm in the quick start. I'm trying to connect traffic. I just downloaded Burp extension, went to Burp, selected the HAR file, the extension that I downloaded. Click on next. Now, Acto's Burp extension is getting populated. You can see the second tab is done. The third point is start Burp proxy and browse any website. So you will see once I browse, I'll open my browser. And now I've just got to the app loom.com. And I'm just going to try browsing through Loom. I'm just going to click bunch of things. This will record a lot of traffic in burp, and here it is. This is Acto extension. And you can see all the 3 points are now done, and we have a burp collection. In this collection, we have recorded all the API endpoints that burp received through traffic. I just showed you how Acto was able to discover all the APIs using burp extension. Step one was we just downloaded Acto's burp extension. Step two, we recorded apps traffic in burp. And step three, we got all the API inventory in Acto. It's very easy and you can do it under 5 minutes. Now, let's move on to our second use case, which is sensitive data exposure through APIs. Now, in this, what we are going to do is we'll go to Acto, we'll click on Sensitive Data tab. Step 2, we'll check all the sensitive data exposure in request and response. And step 3, I'll show you how to configure your own sensitive data types in settings. Let me show you how to do that. Great. Now I'm in Acto. I'm clicking on one of the APIs and I see credit card. You see Acto has detected credit card in response. Now I'm going to go to sensitive values of another API and I see email. There is a sensitive data tab on the left using which I can filter sensitive parameters. For example, in this case, I filtered for email and I saw a sensitive value being passed in response. This is a demo Juice Shop app that I'm using. Now I'm going to go to settings and I'm going to add a data type called ID with param name equals ID. I'll save it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Juice Shop and I'm going to browse through Juice Shop, get a bunch of data to get, ID in my sensitive param. I'm clicking bunch of places in Juice Shop and now I'm back to API inventory. Now in the API inventory, you see we found out ID. Acto automatically detected sensitive value ID in response. Let's go to sensitive data tab and you see 3 detection of ID. And I'm just going to filter it out. Here we have detected ID 3 times, updated underscore ID, original underscore ID, and data underscore ID. And you can also see some of the values in sensitive values tab. And that's it. This is your demo of how Acto detects sensitive data exposure in APIs. We just saw Acto's 2 use cases, API inventory and sensitive data exposure. Now we'll move on to the third use case, which is actually the best use case of Acto. Acto is an API security testing tool. So you can actually use Acto to create any kind of custom YAML test and start testing in your CI/CD pipeline. Let's see how you do it. I'm going to create a custom test in this demo. Let's go to an API which has CSRF token in it. Here I've taken a Juice Shop API. See, it has CSRF token in its request. Now I'm going to go to the test editor. This is the playground for AppSec engineers to add any kind of test they want. And you can see Acto already comes with 132 tests already built in its test library. I'm starting right now with a blank test. This is a YAML template of Acto. I'm going to add some ID, give it a name, add a nice description, and I'm going to add some details. First one, filter all the APIs which have CSRF header. And here I'm writing a test which detects broken authentication in the API. So I'm going to remove CSRF header from the API request. And lastly, check if the API still works without CSRF token and gives 2xx response. And I can add some stronger validation also. For example, in this case, I'm going to check if the response is similar to the original API response. Let's add some impact. Give it a category, subcategory, add some tags, add some references. And let's go to the API selection filters where I'm checking API should have response code between 200 and 300 and the request headers which have key equal to CSRF token. This key I'm going to extract and use later. Now let's move on to the execute block. And you can see in the execute block, I'm going to delete the header using the key that I extracted in API selection filters. By the way, you can use multiple requests here. I'm using the type single, which is a single request. And I've added validation with response code between 200 and 300. Let's select an API that you want to test. I'm selecting the API that I showed you earlier. I'm going to click on Run Test and see the result. It's high. So there's a vulnerability found by Acto. Let's see the attempt. Let's go to original request. This is the request of the API, original one. And you can see there's a CSRF token in it. But if I go to attempt, let's see what happens. In the attempt request, I do not see a CSRF token. Which means when I removed CSRF token and attempted the request, it actually worked. And it gave a 2xx response. Now let's add stronger validation to it. I'm adding response payload percentage match equal to 80%, which means that it matches at least 80% with my original response. Now let's save it. It's added to my custom test. I'm going to again add the API and click on Run Test. And I found a vulnerability. Yeah, and this worked. Basically, you can use Acto's test editor over here to add any custom test. It's very customizable. You can go to docs.acto.io and see all the operators that are possible. We just saw how easy it was to create a YAML test in Acto. Now that you've created some custom test and you have this Acto's test library, you should now go ahead and start automating your test for all the OWASP API top 10. I'll show you a demo of how to do that. Let's go to Acto and go to Acto's API inventory. Click on Run Test. Here, I see a list of all OWASP API top 10 categories with bunch of tests that we have in our test library. You can see I've selected broken authentication and we have about 7 tests in it. I'm selecting 2 tests that I want to test our APIs for. I selected JWT null algorithm and broken authentication. I also selected JWT failed to verify signature. Now click on Run Once Now. By the way, I can also schedule tests in Acto. Let's go to the testing tab and see some results. Here we go. Look at all of these nice results. Let's click on one of these JWT null algorithm. I see some description. It tells me about the issue details. I see what is the category, what endpoint is affected. It's kind of like a nice report that Acto generates for you. You see in the original request, in my auth token, it's ending with CGK. Look at it very carefully because we are going to compare now with the response, with the request in attempt. Now here is a vulnerable attempt. And you see the auth token here has a dot at the end, which means auth token was modified. And that's JWT null algorithm, and the test passed with a 200 OK and a success code. Let's go to another one. I'm going to select broken auth by removing auth token. Let's go to again description over here. Yeah, some nice details. Let's go to the original request. I see the auth token over here. Now in this test, I'm actually removing the auth token. Similar to what we saw earlier in the YAML template. In the attempt, I don't see an auth token. So I created a request by removing auth token and actually passed. You can see the status is success. And our endpoint is vulnerable to broken authentication. So this was simple. Now we just saw Acto's 4 use cases: API discovery, sensitive data exposure, adding custom YAML test, and fourth one, automating API testing for all the OWASP API top 10. Now, the next step is you should know how to deploy Acto. It's very easy. You just have to go to the GitHub repository and follow the installation steps. Let's see a demo for this. All right. I'm now in the Acto's GitHub repository, and I'll just scroll down a little bit and go to the section how to get started. You see this git command. You have to just git clone Acto's repository. You can see on my screen it's cloning Acto. Now we'll follow the second step. Go to the clone directory and do cd Acto. And the last step, make sure that if you're on Windows or Mac, your Docker desktop is running. Let's run this command, docker compose upd. That's it. You can see all the modules are downloading. Yeah, it looks like it all went fine. Yeah, everything is running fine. I'm just going to open Acto on port 9090. Sign up with the email ID and password. And here is a nice onboarding for you. If you want, you can do this onboarding. It will help you understand what Acto is about. For all our demo purposes, we use Juice Shop as a vulnerable app. Here, I'm inside Acto now. And you can see a nice inventory over here, which is juice shop inventory. You can see some tests that we conducted on juice shop. Now, as a next step, you have to connect with Burp and populate your own inventory. All right. Now that you know how to deploy Acto and you've learned all of the Acto's use cases, go ahead and start your API security journey with Acto. I'll touch briefly what's next for Acto if you're interested. So, what's available today in Acto? You see, we have complete API discovery, sensitive data exposure, changes in API, custom test, automated testing. And today we cover from the OWASP 2023 list 6 categories and what's coming next. We'll have complete OWASP top 10 coverage, so all the 4 leftover categories will be covered. Business logic testing, support for GraphQL, and support for gRPC APIs. So these are all the things that you can expect in Acto in the next few months, and there's like a huge roadmap that we have. If you like Acto, go to the GitHub repository now, install Acto, and start your API security journey. If you have any questions, you can email me directly or you can write to Acto at help@acto.io.